Module 2, Strategies for Implementing a Community-Engaged Research Project. In this module, we are going to build on what we've already learned in Module 1 regarding community-engaged research. The following modules were created, like all good community work, through a collaborative process that included the team at the Southern California Translational Science Institute Office of Community Engagement, the Scripps Research Translational Institute Community Engagement Program, the Scripps Whittier Diabetes Institute Project Dulce, as well as members from the communities we serve. We thank you for all your support and feedback. The Scripps Research Translational Institute, or SRTI, Community Engagement Team consists of the following members. You are welcome to contact the team with any questions or comments. This instructional course consists of 3 individual learning modules. Module 1 discussed community-engaged research and explained what it is and why we should consider this type of research. Feel free to review that module again as needed. In this module, we will assess strategies for implementing a community-engaged project. You can then continue to Module 3, which will review potential barriers to successful research and consider solutions to these problems. Before we begin Module 2, please click on the following link to complete the Module 2 pretest in the description below. The objectives of this module are to review the suggested timeline and strategies for a study implementation, identify ways to formalize the researcher-community relationship, discuss how to develop research proposals and obtain funding, and lastly, to plan for dissemination of findings. Let's review another example of CEnR in action. Project Dulce, a nationally recognized diabetes self-management and education program, was developed by the Scripps Whittier Diabetes Institute, the Council of Community Clinics, and the County of San Diego. The project uses a nurse-led multidisciplinary team to provide clinical care and peer educators to deliver diabetes education in federally qualified health centers serving disadvantaged populations in San Diego, California. Because of limitations with in-person evaluations, Dulce Digital was developed as a text messaging program for mobile devices instead of face-to-face interactions to help patients manage their type 2 diabetes. A total of 126 Latinos with poorly controlled type 2 diabetes were recruited and randomized to receive either usual diabetes care or Dulce Digital. Dulce Digital participants received 3 types of text messages: educational or motivational messages, medication reminders, and blood glucose monitoring prompts. A total of 2 to 3 messages per day were sent at the beginning of the study, with frequency of the messages tapering over 6 months. The Dulce Digital study is a good example of a community-engaged research model. Before the study even began, a great deal of information about the community was collected. The research team engaged patients and peer educators early on to understand what type of technology-based programs they would be interested in. Focus groups, which consisted of meetings with a group of 8 to 10 participants intended to gather information, were held with members of the community. These groups were used to learn about the participants' perception and use of cell phones and text messaging, and to gather feedback on the program concept. Through meetings and key informant interviews, community members also provided input on the research objectives, study design, outreach and recruitment strategies, consenting and data collection processes, and the content of the text messages. Once the study started, the same peer educators were involved in the recruitment, consenting and data collection processes. Focus groups and surveys were conducted with completed participants to learn about their perspectives on Dulce Digital, including barriers to participation and positives and negatives of the texting intervention. It was during these focus groups that participants stated they wanted more personalized information related to their diabetes in addition to the generic messages received. Dulce Digital has not only achieved promising clinical results with better glucose control in their intervention group, but it also has proven to be acceptable in the community. Due to this community engagement work that was implemented at the beginning of the study, Dulce Digital was relevant and met community needs. Participants provided overwhelmingly positive feedback about the program during post-study focus groups. Dulce Digital's commitment to a bidirectional partnership led to its success. The success with the Dulce Digital led to development of a new study titled Dulce Digital Me. In September of 2016, this new study received a 5-year R01 grant from the National Institutes of Health, or NIH, and the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases, also known as the NIDDK. Based on what was learned with prior participant feedback, this new study will feature both individualized messaging and tailored goal setting and feedback. Here is a quick look at the Dulce Digital Me approach that emerged from these community engagement efforts. Rather than using an app, it is cloud-based. In the original Dulce Digital model, all participants received the same standard educational text messages and were prompted to check their blood sugar, and manually text in their results. In contrast, the new Dulce Digital Me model is a cloud-based approach. While it maintains the standard messaging that was shown to be effective in the original Dulce Digital, it also allows for wireless transmission of blood glucose values directly from the meter. Dulce Digital Me also wirelessly captures information about medication adherence and brief assessments of diet, physical activity, and stress levels. All of this information is transmitted to the cloud and then used to inform individualized feedback and goal-setting messages that are sent back to participants. Time for a quick quiz. Researchers who are interested in approaching potential community partners should do so A. When they are ready to develop a research question, B. Immediately after developing a research question, C. At least 6 months prior to developing a research question, D. Only after they secure grant funding so as not to waste the community's time. The correct answer is C. Researchers should approach potential community partners at least 6 months prior to developing a research question. Now that you've seen a good case in action, let's review a hypothetical timeline to get started. The suggested CEnR project timeline is as follows. At least 6 months prior to starting your project, the following should be initiated. First, understand the community or clinic you want to work with. Researchers should plan to spend considerable time getting to know the community before they approach individuals, community clinics, or organizations about partnering. To connect with the community, researchers should consider searching for local community events and groups online, visiting local schools, churches, and community or recreational centers, attending cultural events, reading local newspapers and magazines that are specific to particular communities or cultural groups, or contacting local nonprofits and volunteering at their events. Once a researcher really gets to understand the community, its members, organizations, needs, and values, the next step is the identification of a potential partner. When looking for a potential partner, think about why you want to work with a particular community or clinical organization. What is the mutual benefit to both researchers and community members? Does the organization you're considering have the capacity to do research? What kind of infrastructure and technology capacities do they have? It is always easier to start a research relationship for a project if there has been previous positive connections with the community or clinic through, for example, university services, previous research collaborations, or referrals from trustworthy sources. Third, you should build important relationships. Each partner enters into a potential research collaboration with their own perspectives, needs, and agendas, some of which may overlap, but will also be different from those of the other partners. Researchers looking to approach the community about a project idea should utilize the following strategies. They should approach the community with an open mind. They should recognize that the community members are experts in their community and have unique perspectives about the community's needs and assets. One of the best strategies to develop relationships with community members is to get involved. Visibility is key to relationship building. For example, you can attend community events, meetings, or celebrations. This will show community members that you are willing to meet on their turf, rather than expecting community residents to come to the university or clinic. Community members interested in approaching researchers about a project should find the right researcher. This is more than just identifying an expert on the community need you have identified. You should identify a researcher who can work with you, your community, and the specific questions you want to address. Use online resources. Research institute or university websites can be a good first step as they often provide search options by research interest or expertise. The next step would be to schedule a meeting with a researcher to learn more about his or her interests in and experience working with the community. And lastly, when approaching a faculty member or researcher, you need to recognize you are an expert in the community and you have a lot of skills and assets that researchers need. In a sincere CEnR collaboration, ideally the community partner is involved with all aspects of the proposal process, including forming the research question. This will benefit the research proposal because the community partner has an in-depth understanding of the characteristics and health needs of the community. Developing research design. Community partners can play a very important role in all aspects of developing the research design, including the review and selection of tools and assessments, recruitment and retention strategies, methods, and dissemination strategies being proposed. Setting sensible goals and ways to reach them. Community members understand the context of these goals and whether they are realistic. It is also critical that the CEnR collaboration considers the knowledge, attitudes, language, beliefs, and practices of the community, and that the results are shared, sustained, and used for the good of the community. Quiz time! It is important that all members involved in the study clearly identify their roles in the project, and that a mediation plan is developed in case of potential conflicts. A. True. B. False. A. True is the correct answer. Here is another example of CEnR in action that demonstrates just how important community input can be throughout all stages of the research project. Dulce Mothers is a diabetes prevention program for Latinas with a history of gestational diabetes, or GDM. The study was modeled on the landmark DPP, or Diabetes Prevention Program, which was a major, large, multi-center study that showed intensive lifestyle interventions can reduce progression to type 2 diabetes. The DPP study showed that an intense diet and exercise intervention can reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes risk by 58% over 3 years. Compared to women without a history of gestational diabetes, the risk of developing type 2 diabetes is 7 times higher among women with a history of GDM. 50 to 60% of Latinas with a history of GDM develop type 2 diabetes within 5 years of delivering their baby. The goal of the Dulce Mother study was to produce a culturally tailored transition of the DPP to reduce type 2 diabetes risk among Latinas with a history of GDM. The Scripps Whittier Diabetes Institute modified the DPP for Dulce Mothers to make it more culturally relevant to this community. They worked with community clinic organizations, women with a history of gestational diabetes, and peer educators to make the program culturally specific. The input provided by the community was vital in ensuring this large, well-known study could be adapted to a specific community of interest. Here's what was learned from the community feedback before beginning the study. The community partners had several recommendations to tailor the DPP curriculum to Latina mothers. Deliver the Dulce Mothers curriculum in Spanish. Have a peer educator in the group teach participants the program. Hold classes at a conveniently located community clinic. Provide childcare to ensure attendees they could attend sessions, and lastly, focus on culturally specific content. All of the core elements of the DPP were retained, with the addition of new, culturally specific content. Examples of these topics include breastfeeding in terms of benefits to both the women and their baby, a new focus on family health, which included discussions on childhood obesity, modeling healthy behaviors to children and other family members, especially those who may be overweight, reducing sedentary behavior such as screen time on cell phones, computers, or TV, non-food rewards for children, and a focus on involving the family in a weekly healthy lifestyle goal. There was also a discussion of culturally driven beliefs, for example, fatalism or the belief that getting diabetes is determined by fate and unavoidable. Cultural values were also discussed in the context of motivational enhancement, emphasized to promote motivation. And lastly, income-related barriers to healthy lifestyles were addressed. Participants were offered suggestions to address the barriers they may face, such as the high cost of healthy foods or a gym membership. 84 Latino women with a history of GDM piloted this culturally tailored curriculum. Here's what we learned after the study was conducted. There were significant improvements in physical activity, diet, cultural beliefs, cholesterol, and blood pressure after the program. In post-study focus groups, participants indicated strong positive acceptance of the program. They felt that the content was new, useful, and culturally relevant. They appreciated the convenient location and benefited from the social support from the peer educator and other group members. In fact, they requested monthly support groups after the classes formally ended. They also wanted a greater emphasis on weight loss in the program. All of the participant feedback is being integrated into a revised version of the Dulce Mothers program, while also maintaining acceptability in this community. Overall, the input from the community being studied helped the program achieve its success. Now let's review how funding for these types of projects may be attained. It's quiz time again! Where should one apply for funding for CEnR studies? A. National Institutes of Health, NIH. B. Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, PCORI. C. Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. D. All of the above. Or E. None of the above. D. All of the above answers are correct. There are a variety of different sources that funds research. This can include government agencies, local foundations, and universities. Funding requirements differ between agencies and may even differ between various grant programs within an agency. There are also specific agencies that primarily fund CEnR. An example would be the California Breast Cancer Research Program that funds CEnR projects focusing on breast cancer, the environment, and disparities. CEnR funding has traditionally been awarded to organizations such as universities and academic medical institutions. However, as CEnR becomes more and more integrated into the design of research programs, funding institutions are catching on. As a result, we are beginning to see a shift in the diversity of institutions who fund CEnR. Another important resource is the University of Washington's Listserv, which disseminates daily CEnR opportunities. It was created in partnership with the Community Campus Partnerships for Health and the Wellesley Institute. On the right is a list of additional sites that can provide funding resources. For the literature review process in CEnR, the research partner can take the lead with access to the university library, electronic databases, and journals. Free public databases to access scientific literature to develop proposals are also available for non-university affiliated partners. Here are some excellent sites to help with the literature review. They can provide journal archives, scholarly articles, consumer health information, and data maps, in addition to a host of other useful resources. Ready for another quick quiz? Compensating community research partners is not consistent with the guidelines of CEnR. A. True. B. False. B. False is the correct answer. Community partners should be fairly compensated for their time and efforts. The next step is to formalize the research partnership between the researcher and the community experts. First, organize a meeting. Next, develop a plan for mediation. Last, identify all roles and responsibilities. We will go through these 3 steps in further detail. Our first step is to organize a meeting. Here, everyone should be able to speak openly, clarify expectations and concerns, and where all parties have their questions addressed. At this time, a draft Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, or a collaboration policy can be developed so that roles, responsibilities, and expectations can be clearly defined for all parties. Here, the group should identify challenges that might occur and propose solutions to meet those challenges. This can also be a time to identify the assets and skills in the group, and see whether other partners are necessary to conduct the work. The budget and compensation should be discussed. Define the specific resources each partner can contribute to the project through time, in-kind contribution, or with the use of grant funds, related to things like office space, project staff, and training. Investigators should ensure that their community partners are compensated for their time and contributions, and that budgets are developed transparently. Also discuss the proposal responsibilities and requirements. Assignments should be made so that each partner contributes to the proposal development. Finally, timelines and a review process should also be discussed. Second, develop a plan for mediation in case things go awry. It may be included in your MOU. Conflicts or differences in opinion are inevitable in collaborations. Developing specific strategies for effective resolution of conflict is essential to demonstrate a commitment to research goals and continue the partnership. Effective conflict resolution may actually strengthen the research partnership. Third, identify roles and responsibilities. For example, are there multiple principal investigators or co-investigators? Be sure to develop a leadership team and an organizational chart. If necessary, it would be helpful to also create a job description for each project member to specifically outline roles and responsibilities. This will ensure that expectations are clear and eliminate duplication of effort. Develop a contingency plan for staff turnover or leadership changes. Unexpected obstacles can surface, such as staff turnover or changes in leadership. Partnership means spending the time to develop trust and, most importantly, to develop the structures that support trust, so that unexpected changes or setbacks can be seen as part of a long-term process that will continue. This contingency plan may be included in the MOU. Make sure all parties understand the timeline needed to obtain funding. Investigators are often used to waiting for a year or more for funding. This needs to be explained to the community partners. Make sure to manage expectations. Don't try to accomplish everything in one proposal. Rome wasn't built in a day. To illustrate, here is an organizational chart of how a CEnR team might be structured. The top row represents the study investigators. Note that in addition to academic and health system researchers, a community member is included as an equal partner on the investigative team. It is also advisable to include a community partner at the staff or ground level to advise on methods, review study materials, and assist with implementation. This diverse team is coordinated by a central project manager who ensures that all viewpoints and partners' contributions are valued and considered. Congratulations, you were funded. Now what? Once funding is secured, another meeting should be held involving all parties. At this meeting, partners should review the proposal and address all questions regarding the research process. The next step involves submitting documents for Institutional Review Board, or IRB, approval. Once funding is obtained, the startup plan should involve the following. The team should establish regular meetings as needed and make sure all parties agree to the schedule. Regular meetings will establish consistent check-ins on project progress, address concerns, and plan next steps. Communicating clearly and frequently during this phase is important. Hiring of staff for the project should be made jointly. Even though project staff will be employees of the organization or the community partner, efforts should be made to gather feedback about potential hires from the partnering organization. One last quiz. The following are ways in which researchers can give back to the community after project completion, except A. Present results at scientific sessions and academic conferences. B. Offer grant writing assistance to community groups interested in research. C. Collaborate with the CAB, Community Advisory Board, to write publications together. A. Is not a way for researchers to give back, as this does not directly involve the community. After data collection and analysis completion, significant time and effort should be devoted to the phase of dissemination and beyond. This is often a step that researchers neglect to communicate clearly to community members, and this can create a great deal of distrust in the community. It is important that the following be addressed. Community dissemination. Make sure that information is disseminated back to all levels of the community organization. Ask about how they prefer to communicate, and consider creative ways of disseminating information. Make sure your data is translated into the community's preferred language or languages. Effective dissemination strategies lead to increased publicity and visibility, which in turn may also lead to additional funding from unexpected sources. Program sustainability. It is important to discuss program sustainability throughout the project period. Develop a plan to identify supplemental funding sources to further the program after the initial funding period ends. This funding may come from the partner organization, a local foundation, or from an additional grant. Wrap-up meeting. A wrap-up meeting of the project should be held to address final concerns, future projects, and ongoing communication. In a traditional research project, normally the end of a project is also the end of the collaboration and the relationship with those involved. However, in CEnR, an ongoing relationship with collaborators is expected and encouraged. Giving back to the community or community partner. Potential short-term benefits for communities might include training provided by outside researchers, grant writing assistance, or technical assistance, which may or may not be directly related to the research. Let's summarize what we discussed in Module 2. Remember that developing a formal CEnR plan should take place at least 6 months prior to starting your project. Clearly identify roles within the researcher-community relationship, and be sure to involve both parties in decision-making. Know that funding can be attained via many avenues, so be sure to use available resources. Thank you for completing the Conducting Community-Engaged Research CEnR Module 2, Strategies for Implementing a Community-Engaged Research Project. To complete the Module 2 post-test, please click on the following link in the description below. Interested in learning more? Look for our other modules on this channel. Module 1 reviews what CEnR is and why we should do it. Module 3 discusses how to problem-solve potential barriers to CEnR. For more information, please contact us at communityengagement@scrippshealth.org.